It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. The Victorian age was a period of great prosperity, progress, and welfare. Colonial expansion was fostered, scientific research was encouraged, and transportation spread and improved. The belief that happiness could be reached through technical progress made for optimism throughout the country. Victorians' middle-class men were proud of their welfare, of their good manners, and of their middle-class values, and they tended to ignore the problems which still afflicted England. There was in fact a part of society, mainly the working class, where misery and distress were still widespread. The new urban conditions, made worse by the growth of slums, had created a lot of health problems. Whole families were often crowded into single rooms, where lack of hygiene occasionally led to cholera. The new Poor Law of 1834 had not been a solution for outstanding problems, and the creation of the much hated workhouses, so unforgettably portrayed and denounced by Dickens, had often made life a hell for poor. Poverty, either the result of bad luck and thoughtless behavior, was virtually regarded as a crime and penalized as such. Debtors, for example, were still kept in jail, and life in prison was appalling. This particular situation, which saw the quality of good, prosperity, and progress on the one hand, and evil, poverty, ugliness, social unrest, and injustice on the other, which opposed ethical conformism to corruption, moralism, and philanthropy, to money and capitalistic greediness, and which separated private life from public behavior, is usually referred to as the Victorian Compromise. The double phase of the age showed two very different and distinguished worlds. The minister Disraeli talked about two nations. The Victorians promoted a code of values that reflect the world as they wanted it to be, not as it really was, based on personal duty, hard work, respectability, and charity. Respectability was a mixture of both morality and hypocrisy, severity and conformity to social standards. It implied the possession of good manners, the ownership of comfortable house with servants and a carriage, church attendance, and charity. Philanthropy was a wide phenomenon. The rich middle class exploited the poor and at the same time managed to help stray children, fallen women, and drunk men. Sexuality was generally repressed in its public and private forms, and prudery in its most extreme manifestations led to denunciation of nudity in art and the rejection of words with sexual connotation from everyday vocabulary. It was the age of a dual morality in which, in particular, those belonging to the upper classes hid under respectability their acceptable desires and primitive instincts. The writers showed society as they saw it. They were aware of evils and they denounced them. However, they did not criticize the world they lived in. They just aimed at making readers realize the social injustice and voiced their fears and doubts. The setting was the city, because it was the main symbol of the industrial civilization, the expression of anonymous lives and lost identities. The theme of the double, already present in some famous stories by Poe, dominates the story of the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Indeed, Jekyll is on the surface a respectable man, but, he says, has always been committed to a profound duplicity of life, and has always contained in himself a potential for profound wickedness. However, because of his high aspirations, he has been obliged to split his two identities. Indeed, an interesting aspect of the story is the way that the strict morality that informs Jekyll's aspirations in society obliges him to completely deny his instinctual side, whose hidden presence therefore grows more oppressive. The story of Dr. Jekyll and his evil double, Mr. Hyde, is a fascinating treatment of the double personality theme, or doppelganger, and brings to the fore the problem of evil within man in a way that both shocked and immensely pleased contemporary readers. The fact that a respectable public figure like Jekyll leads a double life, in fact, strikes at the core of the Victorian compromise and at the fundamental duplicity of the age's moral standards. The novel shows the new awareness of the human mind that far from being a single well-defined block is rather multiple, made up of different and often contrasting or incoherent pieces. Though Stevenson expresses this through the traditional conflict between good and evil, his sensibility heralds the oncoming age of psychoanalysis.